It happened just as the sun dipped behind the pines, casting long, golden shadows across the deck of the family lake house. We were sitting down to dinner, one of those perfect, Instagrammable moments. Crystal glasses clinking, linen napkins folded like origami, everyone pretending we'd always been this close. Ellie sat quietly beside me, 7 years old and freshly brushed, her curls pinned back with a little silver clip shaped like a moon. She was always like this at family gatherings, smiling too hard, shoulders stiff like she was waiting for something to fall. She hadn't touched her mashed potatoes. I leaned in, gently brushing her hair back. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" I whispered. That's when she said it. So softly, I almost missed it. "Mom," she murmured, her voice tight, like it was being squeezed out of her lungs. "If I don't smile, Grandpa said we'll both get in trouble." The words didn't register at first. They just floated there between us, fragile and unfinished. I tried to ask what she meant, but her eyes had already darted to the end of the table, where my father-in-law raised his wineglass and offered her a wink. A wink that made her flinch. I'd seen bruises before, too many, for too long, in the shelters where I'd volunteered. But it's different when the bruises aren't on strangers. It's different when the child is yours. That night, everything I thought I knew about my family, about loyalty, about silence, about what we call love began to unravel. And what I found, buried beneath the weight of polite smiles and holiday photos, was a truth no one wanted to face. But Ellie, she had already been carrying it. And she was done carrying it alone. Let me tell you what happened after that whisper. Because it didn't just change our Thanksgiving. It changed everything. My name is Abigail Carter. I'm 36 years old. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And for the longest time, I believed I understood the anatomy of trauma's silent nature, its hidden patterns, the way it tiptoes in and settles quietly behind someone's eyes. But nothing prepares you for when trauma moves in under your own roof. For most people, I'm the calm one. The one who listens more than she speaks. The one who always knows what to say when someone's falling apart and how to help them stitch the pieces back together. I've built my career on helping others survive what almost broke them. But no textbook, no case study, no clinical hour ever taught me how to survive when the person breaking is a child you love like your own. I wasn't supposed to raise Ellie. She's my niece-a-me sister Catherine's daughter. 7 years ago, when Catherine had a complicated birth and a brutal bout of postpartum depression, I stepped in. Just for a few weeks, I thought. I brought food, ran errands, held the baby when Catherine couldn't day. But weeks turned into months. And months into something deeper. Ellie bonded with me the way some children do when they sense safety. And I bonded with her the way someone does when they finally feel like they're doing something right. I never signed adoption papers, never asked to be called mom. But sometime between first steps and first words, Ellie began calling me that anyway. Mommy Abby. Half warmth, half declaration. I never corrected her. I still remember the first time she reached for my hand in the middle of a crowd. I wasn't expecting it, but she did. Like I was the gravity she trusted most in that moment. And maybe that's what motherhood really is, not biology, not paperwork, but presence. Still, I tried not to overstep. Catherine recovered, got back on her feet, moved states, remarried. She'd take Ellie for holidays, sometimes summers, and I'd step back, remind myself I was just the aunt. But I always felt something uneasy in those handoffs. Ellie would come back quieter, sleepless, more cautious. But when I asked, she'd say everything was fine. I didn't push. Maybe I should have. But I didn't want to be the overbearing one. Didn't want to stir drama in a family that prized silence more than truth. Now I know better. Now I know that silence doesn't keep peace. It hides wounds. I tell you all this not because I want you to think I'm brave, but because I want you to understand something important. When Ellie whispered that sentence to me, "If I don't smile, Grandpa said we'll both get in trouble," I felt something snap inside me. Not rage, not fear, but clarity. I wasn't her legal mother, but I was the one who saw her, heard her, believed her. And in a world where too many children are told to be quiet, I decided that my real job was no longer just to listen. It was to act. Even if it meant losing everything else. Because if I didn't protect her, who would? The lake looked still that morning. Not calm, just still. Like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. We arrived at the family estate in Lake Tahoe just after 9. 3 stories of stone, glass, and inherited arrogance. Nestled between pine trees that reached toward the sky like frozen prayers. It was the kind of house that made silence feel expensive. The kind of house that always seemed cleaner than it should be, like it was afraid of being real. Ellie was unusually quiet in the back seat. She'd been bouncing with excitement the night before, packing her raccoon plush and her art kit, chattering about how the cousins were coming and how Grandma had promised blueberry pancakes. But now, as we pulled into the gravel driveway, she went still. Her fingers curled around the seatbelt. Her eyes locked onto the front door. Not with wonder, but with wariness. I should have known then. The house had been in the family for decades, passed down from Catherine's husband's Scythian old money lineage with newer money renovations. They called it the Ridge. I always thought it felt more like a fortress than a home. Inside, everything smelled like lemon polish and memory. Hardwood floors that echoed too loudly, hallways that held their breath. The furniture was pristine, the rugs antique, the artwork cold and modern. But nothing about the place felt warm. It was supposed to be a weekend of celebration, my father-in-law's 70th birthday. A judge, retired but still revered in his community. He'd been planning this party for months. Every detail mattered, the catered menu, the curated guest list, even the way the napkins were folded to resemble swans. Control disguised as tradition. The guest rooms were already assigned. Ellie and I were placed in the east wing, away from the main staircase. Out of sight. Catherine, of course, had the master suite with her husband, Sam, the man Ellie used to call Uncle Sammy with a giggle. She didn't use that name anymore. She didn't call him anything now. As we unpacked, I noticed Ellie kept glancing at the hallway. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She nodded too quickly, then whispered, "Can I sleep next to you while we're here?" My stomach sank. The first night was formal, everyone dressed in deep greens and burgundy, sipping wine on the back terrace like we were characters in some perfect Thanksgiving card. But beneath the sparkle, I could feel the tension thread itself through every smile. It always did, with this family. Beneath the perfect china and polite conversations, there were undercurrent stories no one dared speak out loud. Ellie stayed close to me the whole evening. Didn't run with the cousins. Didn't want to stare. Just held onto my hand like it was the only anchor she had. Later that night, I saw her staring at the antique armchair in the corner of the great room. An oversized, carved piece with claw feet and crushed velvet upholstery. "That's the chair," she said quietly. I frowned. "What chair, baby?" "The one from my dream," she murmured. "The one that hurts." I wanted to believe it was just a dream. I really did. But that house, that weekend, it was never just about celebration. It was a gathering place for secrets. And I was about to find out how deep they ran. The first sign wasn't loud. It wasn't a scream, or a sudden sob, or even a word. It was how Ellie sat so tightly into herself on the edge of the bed, as if her limbs might break if she let them stretch. Her knees drawn in, her arms wrapped tight, her head down, curls slipping loose from their clip. I'd seen that posture before. In shelters. In waiting rooms. In trauma clinics where children spoke more through their bodies than their voices. It was the morning after we arrived at the Ridge. The rest of the family had gone out for brunch, some overpriced lakeside bistro Catherine insisted we try. I'd stayed behind with Ellie, saying she wasn't feeling well. It wasn't exactly a lie. I found her sitting in the corner of the guest room, holding her raccoon plush to her chest, rocking just barely. No tears. No sniffles. Just the rhythm of someone trying not to make noise. "Ellie?" I said gently. She didn't look up, just pressed her face deeper into the stuffed animal. I sat beside her, not too close. I knew better than to crowd her. "You want to talk to me, baby?" A pause, a tiny nod. But she didn't speak. Instead, she reached for her coloring book, the one with fairy castles and flower gardens, and flipped it open. There, between 2 pages of scribbles, was a single drawing she'd tried to hide. A red chair. Not just any chair. The same antique armchair from the great room. But in her drawing, the seat was covered in jagged spikes, and tiny red lines spilled down from where someone would sit. Next to it, she had drawn a stick figure girl. Tears as big as her head rolled down her face. I swallowed hard. "Did you draw this?" I asked softly. Another nod. "Is that you?" She hesitated, then pointed to the crying girl, and then whispered, "She doesn't like the game." My skin chilled. "What game, sweetheart?" She shook her head, curls flying. "I can't say. It's a secret. He said if I tell, I'll go away. And Mommy Abby too." She didn't need to name him. Not yet. But my heart had already dropped into my stomach. This wasn't just a bad dream. This wasn't just sensitive behavior, like Catherine always said. This was something else. Something darker. That night, I watched Ellie while she slept. She'd insisted on sleeping in my bed, something she hadn't done since she was 4. She clung to me, even in sleep. Every few hours, she twitched, whimpered, whispered things I couldn't understand. Once, around 2 a.m., I woke to her mumbling. "No pinches. No quiet game. Please." I didn't move. I just watched. Heartbreaking. Mind racing. The next morning, she avoided everyone. Barely touched her pancakes. Flinched when Uncle Sam ruffled her hair. That's when I noticed it. The bruise on her forearm, just under her sleeve. Small. Faint. But unmistakable. And then I knew. Knew in my bones. This wasn't anxiety. This wasn't her imagination. This was real. Ellie was trying to tell me. And I was finally listening. It was almost evening when she finally told me. Not everything, just enough to crack the shell of denial wide open. The sky outside had turned the color of old bruised dusky purple, streaked with orange. Inside the ridge, the lights were low, the fireplace humming like it belonged to a different kind of family, one that laughed over cocoa instead of secrets. Ellie had curled up beside me on the oversized leather armchair in our guest room. She was wearing her dinosaur pajamas, green with tiny yellow stegosauruses marching across the sleeves, and holding her raccoon so tightly I could see the seams stretching. Her knuckles were pale. I brushed her hair back gently. "You don't have to talk if you're not ready," I said. She was quiet for a while. Then, in a voice no louder than a sigh, she asked, "Do I have to go with him tomorrow?" My throat closed. "Who, baby?" "Uncle Sam," she whispered. "He said I have to play the game again when everyone goes to the spa." I kept my voice calm, steady. I've coached trauma survivors for years. I know how to stay centered. But nothing prepares you for hearing something like that come from your own child. I took a slow breath. "What kind of game?" She didn't answer right away. She just stared down at her raccoon, running her thumb over the patch on its tail. "It's the quiet game," she said at last. "If I move or make noise, I lose." I felt my whole body tense. "He says good girls don't wiggle. That only bad girls cry. Where do you play the game?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. Her voice grew smaller. "In the red chair, in the room by the garage. He says it's our secret clubhouse. But it's not fun." My hands shook. "Did anyone else see?" I asked, barely able to breathe. She nodded. "Grandma did once." I was trying to get away, and I bumped into the cabinet. She said I was being difficult and told me to behave. The world tilted. I felt nausea rise and had to close my eyes for a second just to stay grounded. There it was. Not just the abuse, but the silence, the permission, the protection of the abuser. I opened my eyes and looked at her. "Ellie, thank you for telling me. You are so brave. End of. She didn't say anything, but her little shoulders relaxed for the first time in days. Just a fraction. But it was there. Later that night, after she had fallen asleep beside me, her small hand gripping my sleeve like I might vanish, I slipped quietly into the hallway. I took her smartwatch, the one with the GPS and built-in voice memo feature, and plugged it into my laptop. I didn't expect to find anything. But there it was. A single, saved audio file. Unlabeled. I hit play. And heard his voice. Low. Breathless. If you say anything, your auntie will be taken away. You'll go live somewhere bad. So be still. Be quiet. Good girls are quiet. Then the sound of movement. A whimper. And Ellie's voice, barely audible. Please don't. I want to go back to Mommy Abby. I stopped breathing. I saved the file. 3 copies. 1 for CPS. 1 for my lawyer. 1 for me. Then I sat in the dark, staring at the glow of the screen, while the truth burned like acid in my veins. This was no longer a suspicion. It was evidence. And war. I don't remember getting up. I just remember standing in the guest room, staring at the soft blue glow of my laptop screen like it had teeth. My fingers were trembling, hovering over the trackpad, afraid to press play again. The file had no name, just a date and timestamp. 4:27 p.m. yesterday. Ellie's smartwatch, the one I'd bought for her last Christmas, had a hidden feature I'd completely forgotten about: voice memo auto capture. It activated when a phrase like, "I'm scared," or "stop it," was spoken near the device. I'd enabled it without thinking, buried in the settings when I first set it up, never imagining it would ever be needed. And yet, here we were. I pressed play. Again. The first few seconds were quiet. I heard the rustle of fabric. Ellie breathing. Something metallic in the background, maybe a zipper or a key turning in a lock. Then came his voice. Sam. Low, measured, calculated. You know the rules, Ellie, he said, almost playfully. No noise. Good girls don't fidget. I could hear her shift. A tiny gasp. Then silence. Too long. Too still. Then Ellie's voice, so soft it barely registered. But I don't want to. He laughed. That cold, amused laugh I'd heard him use with waiters and store clerks. Dismissive. Demeaning. You want Aunt Abby to go away? He said. If you keep whining, that's what's gonna happen. You'll be taken somewhere else. Somewhere bad. There was a sound then. A sharp one. Like a slap on fabric. Followed by a soft, muffled whimper. I paused the audio. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. My entire body had gone cold. This wasn't interpretation. This wasn't suspicion. This was proof. Hard, digital, undeniable proof. I looked down at Ellie, sleeping curled on the bed just a few feet away, her breath hitching every now and then, like even her dreams couldn't fully relax. I reopened the file and saved it. 3 copies. 1 to the cloud. 1 to a flash drive. 1 I emailed to myself with the subject line, "Do not ignore this." Then I opened a clean folder on my desktop and started dragging everything in. The voice recording. The photo of Ellie's bruise I'd taken that morning. A scan of the drawing she made the red chair with spikes. A voice memo I'd recorded of her saying, "He said if I told, Mommy Abby would get taken." I labeled it all, categorized it, numbered it. It felt clinical, robotic, but I needed control, because everything else in that house felt like it was crumbling. At 1:23 a.m., I texted my former colleague, Lauren, a child advocacy lawyer I'd once worked alongside at the shelter in Denver. Emergency. I have a recording. Child under my care. Can you talk at dawn? She replied instantly. Yes, don't do anything alone until we speak. I put the watch back on Ellie's nightstand, exactly where she'd left it. Then I climbed into bed beside her and lay there staring at the ceiling, the sound of Sam's voice still echoing in my head. You want Aunt Abby to go away? He knew exactly what he was doing, exactly what fear to plant. But what he didn't know was that I record everything, every word, every breath, and now so would the court. Ellie stirred beside me, turning into my side. I wrapped an arm around her and whispered, I heard him too, baby. I believe you. I believe every word. She didn't wake, but for the first time in days, she didn't flinch. They say when you light a match in the dark, two things happen. The light shows you the truth, and the shadows start to run. I made the call at 7:02 the next morning. I reported what I knew, what I'd heard, what I'd saved. I didn't cry, didn't yell. I spoke clearly, deliberately, like someone who could no longer afford to doubt herself. By 9:30, two uniformed officers were knocking at the front door of the Ridge. The front windows sparkled like always, and inside, the house looked just as curated fresh pastries on the marble island, the morning fire crackling low in the hearth. But the moment those badges crossed the threshold, everything shattered. Catherine was the first to respond. She stormed into the foyer like a storm bottled up for too long. What the hell is going on, Abby? She snapped, eyes blazing. You brought the police into our home, into our family, without even asking me? I didn't flinch. They're not here because of me. They're here because of what's been done to Ellie. Catherine blinked, then laughed, sharp and humorless. Oh, so now you're the hero again, playing mommy like it's your role. God, Abby, you're unbelievable. On too. I could feel every set of eyes in the room shift. My mother stood stiff by the fireplace, her teacup rattling slightly against its saucer. Grandpa was seated in his favorite leather chair, arms crossed, face like stone. Then Sam entered. Slow, calm, wearing that same damn cable-knit sweater he always wore to appear harmless. He didn't speak, just offered a concerned frown. What's this about? He asked the officers. Some misunderstanding? I turned to him. I have a recording, I said, of your voice, of Ellie crying, of what you told her would happen if she spoke up. The mask faltered, just for a split second. Then he chuckled, glancing at Catherine. Abby's always been dramatic, he said, a little too close to the edge. Maybe someone should ask why she's so obsessed with a child that's not even hers. Catherine gasped. How dare you accuse him? He's never touched that child inappropriately. I pulled out my phone. I didn't have to say a word. I just played 10 seconds of the audio. 10 seconds was all it took. The color drained from my mother's face. Grandpa shifted, just slightly. Catherine didn't blink. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice dropping into something colder than rage. If you keep going with this, she said, we'll take Ellie from you. We'll get lawyers. We'll make sure the court sees this for what it is, a vendetta. I stared at her. The sister I once shared secrets with in bunk beds. The woman who handed me her newborn 7 years ago and said, she's yours too. Now she was weaponizing that same child against me. I'm not scared of you, I said quietly. And I'm not scared of your threats. Her lips curled into a sneer. You should be. Because once we're done, no judge will trust you to raise a goldfish. From the stairs, a voice broke through. Mommy, Abby? Ellie, tiny, barefoot, holding her raccoon in one hand. I turned toward her. It's okay, sweetheart. Go back upstairs. I'll be right there. She hesitated, eyes scanning the tension in the room, then disappeared around the corner. When I turned back, Catherine was already walking away. But her words lingered like smoke. This is the last time we let you near her. I promise you that. And just like that, the line was drawn. Blood or not, this family had made its choice. They chose silence. I chose her. I didn't leave the Ridge. Not right away. I sat on the edge of the guest room bed, Ellie tucked under the blankets, her raccoon curled in the crook of her arm. She was finally asleep again, though I could still see the crease between her brow. 7 in rest, her body braced for danger. That was the moment it hit me. They were never going to protect her. Not Catherine. Not my parents. Not the man they called Uncle Sam and handed their trust to like he was some second son. They had all made their choice. And now it was my turn. I stepped into the hallway, closed the bedroom door behind me, and pulled out my phone. No more delays. No more waiting for the right moment. That moment had passed the first time they heard Ellie cry and did nothing. I scrolled until I found the name. Lauren Pierce. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Former colleague, attorney, advocate, and the fiercest woman I've ever known in a courtroom. I texted her 3 words. It's time. Call? She rang back less than 2 minutes later. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. The recording, the bruises, the drawings, the threats, the silence, Ellie's voice breaking like a twig in the dark. She didn't interrupt, just listened. I could hear her scribbling notes. And then her voice dropped low and sharp, the way it always did when she meant business. You have enough to file for emergency guardianship, she said. We'll pair it with a protective order and move to have full custody suspended pending investigation. But I'm not her legal mother, I said quietly, staring at the framed photo on the dresser. Ellie at age 3, frosting smeared across her cheeks, sitting on my lap. Lauren didn't pause. That can be changed. What can't be changed is the evidence you have and the danger she's in. Courts don't need bloodlines to act. They need proof. And you've got plenty. She gave me a list: documents to gather, forms to file, statements to prepare. She'd already reserved a time slot with the magistrate that afternoon. No delay. No wiggle room. This will get ugly, she warned. Catherine's going to fight. They'll try to paint you as obsessive, unstable, like you're inserting yourself where you don't belong. I don't care, I said. She is where I belong. We ended the call, and I got to work. I scanned Ellie's drawings, re-downloaded the voice memo and backed it up again. Pulled every email, every message from Catherine that hinted at her awareness every moment. She deflected or downplayed Ellie's fear. Then I sat down and wrote a sworn statement. In it, I told the truth. All of it. I wrote about the way Ellie asked to sleep beside me every night. About the bruises she never knew I noticed. About the games she didn't know had names. And the way she flinched not when someone yelled, but when someone was too quiet. By noon, I had everything ready. I told the family we were leaving. They didn't stop me. Catherine didn't even look up from her phone. But Sam, he followed me to the car. You're making a mistake, he said, voice flat. You think anyone's going to believe you over us? I met his eyes and smiled. That calm, terrifying kind of smile that says, you've already lost. I don't need them to believe me, I said. They'll believe her. I got in the car, buckled Ellie in, and drove away. Not just from the house. From the lie. From the version of family I had once believed in. And toward the truth. Even if it had to be fought for in courtrooms lined with marble and memory. The courthouse didn't feel like justice. It felt like cold tile floors and the faint smell of stale coffee. It felt like nerves that settled in your collarbone, just beneath your breath. And it felt like every fear I'd ever had, lined up in rows of benches and wooden doors. But Ellie held my hand the whole way in. She wore her blue cardigante, one with the stitched stars on the cuffs. I'd buttoned it all the way up that morning, smoothing the fabric as if it could shield her from what was coming. Her fingers were small in mine, but steady. Outside courtroom 2B, my attorney, Lauren Pierce, stood waiting. Her suit was charcoal gray. Her expression was steel. She's going to try everything, Lauren said. Character defamation, emotional manipulation, parental loyalty, you name it. I nodded. Let her try. We stepped inside. The room was quiet polished wood, muted light, an old American flag leaning slightly in the corner like it had grown tired of watching people lie under it. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Harold Monroe adjusted his glasses and scanned the case summary. Miss Carter, you're requesting emergency guardianship of Ellie Rose Whitmore, he began. Miss Whitmore, you filed a counter motion for custody restoration and submitted testimony challenging Miss Carter's mental stability. Is that correct? Catherine stood beside her attorney, every bit the image of control. Hair in a perfect twist, pearl earrings, lips pressed in just enough concern. She gave a tight nod. Yes, Your Honor. Her lawyer slid a file across the table. We believe Miss Carter has developed a savior complex. Her history of trauma work has blurred her boundaries. We have expert testimony to that effect. That was when they brought him in. Dr. James Litton, a paid expert witness. Polished shoes, polished voice, and an evaluation he'd never conducted in person. She exhibits obsessive tendencies, he said, gesturing to a highlighted quote in a social media post. This is classic transference. She's projecting unresolved guilt onto a child who has not made a direct accusation of harm. I didn't even blink, because I knew what came next. Lauren stood calmly. Your Honor, we'd like to submit Exhibit A. She tapped her laptop. The speakers crackled. And then, Ellie's voice. Tiny. Clear. Please don't. I want to go back to Mommy Abby. Followed by Sam's reply. You want her to go away? Then be quiet. Don't ruin this. The courtroom fell silent. Even Catherine's posture changed just barely. Lauren continued. Exhibit Belly's drawing from the school counselor, depicting the red chair, the spikes, and a stick figure labeled Uncle Sam. She placed the drawing on the evidence table. Judge Monroe studied it for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Do you understand what guardianship entails, Miss Carter? I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I've lived it for 7 years. I'm not her mother by law, but I've been her mother in every way that matters. He leaned back, tapping a finger on the bench. I've seen many families claim love. Fewer show it through action. He paused. Temporary emergency guardianship is granted to Abigail Carter, effective immediately. A no-contact order is issued against Samuel Whitmore pending further investigation. The gavel fell. Clean. Final. Catherine's mouth parted, no longer calm. Her hand trembled as she reached for her purse. But it was done. I turned to Ellie, who'd been sitting quietly beside Lauren. Her eyes met mine. You're safe now, I whispered. She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped. Just a little. Like the weight she'd been carrying finally had somewhere else to go. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that pretends to be ordinary. The kind where sunlight filters in just right, and for a moment, you think you've made it through the worst. We were at home, your new home. Not grand, not pristine like the Ridge, but safe. 2 bedrooms, peeling paint in places, and a backyard that Ellie had claimed as her own little world. We'd planted marigolds together that weekend. She named them after planets. That morning, I was folding laundry in the living room when Ellie padded in barefoot, still in her pajamas, clutching a thick piece of drawing paper. Can I show you something? She asked. I smiled. Always. She handed me the paper, then climbed into my lap like she used to when she was 4. Her head tucked under my chin. Her thumb found the edge of my sleeve, gripping it. The drawing was simple 4 stick figures. Numbered. Labeled. 1. Mommy Abby with curly hair, arms wide open. 2. Ellie smiling, standing close. 3. Grandpa with gray curls and a guitar. 4. Uncle Ben inside a black box, arms straight, face angry. My pulse skipped. Uncle Ben, Catherine's brother. The quiet one. The one who always brought card tricks and gummy bears to family events. The one no one ever watched too closely, because he seemed harmless. I looked down at Ellie. Her eyes didn't meet mine. What's this box, sweetheart? I asked softly. She shrugged. That's Grandma's spare room. At the Ridge. My throat tightened. He used to come in at night, she added. When it was his turn. I froze. His turn? I whispered. She nodded slowly. Sometimes it was Sam. Sometimes Uncle Ben. They said I was lucky because I had 2 favorites. The words hit like a slow earthquake, quiet at first, then shaking the whole world out of place. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed. Steady. Focused. "Thank you for telling me," I said, kissing the top of her head. "You don't have to say anything else right now. I promise I'll handle it." She nestled closer. "I didn't want to ruin everything," she murmured. "But I didn't want to keep secrets anymore either." I took a photo of the drawing with trembling hands and emailed it to Detective Larson, the same officer who handled Sam's case. He called within 20 minutes. "We missed him," he said, voice tight. "He wasn't on our radar." 10. I heard the guilt in his tone. I didn't have space for it. I needed action. "We're interviewing other children from those family events," he continued. "See if there's a pattern. If Ellie wasn't the only one." She wasn't. 5 days later, the call came. 2 other minors had corroborated Ellie's story, different weekends. Same room, same quiet game. Ben was arrested at his apartment outside Sacramento. In his living room, detectives found a drawer full of gifts, small toys, hair clips, crumpled notes in childish handwriting. Souvenirs. When I told Ellie, I chose my words carefully. "Ben won't hurt anyone anymore," I said. She looked at me, really looked, and asked, "Will people believe me this time too?" I knelt beside her, cupping her face gently. "They already do," I said. "You're not alone anymore. And you were never the liar they tried to make you feel like." She nodded. Then, just as she turned to leave the room, she paused. "Do you think Grandma knew?" The question split the air. And I couldn't answer. Not yet. But I would. Because silence didn't get to live here anymore. Our new house doesn't creak like the ridge. The floors are soft with age, yes, but not suspicious. The walls aren't lined with antique portraits or cold family legacy. They're blank, waiting. Waiting for the kind of memories that don't hurt when you remember them. It's small. 2 bedrooms. 1 bath. A kitchen just big enough for 2 people to dance clumsily between the stove and the sink. The water pressure's a little moody, and the back fence leans slightly to the right. But it's ours. More importantly, it's hers. Ellie chose her bedroom color herself, pale yellow, like the inside of a sunflower, she said. We spent a weekend painting it together, both of us covered in flecks by the end, laughing more than I thought either of us still remembered how. She taped her drawings to the wall, some new, some old. None of them had black boxes anymore. The first night we slept there, she lined her sneakers by the front door without being asked. "I want them ready," she said simply. "For school tomorrow?" I asked. She shook her head. "Number just, in case we go somewhere fun." And I knew what she meant. Not fun like birthday parties or carnivals. Fun. Like freedom. Like choice. Like control. Like not being taken away without warning. We built routines slowly, like puzzle pieces rediscovered in the bottom of an old box. Pancakes on Sunday mornings. Watering our herbs in the backyard every evening, basil, mint, and 3 little marigold starts she insisted on planting near the back fence. She said the fence looked less lonely when it had something alive beside it. She started sleeping through the night again. Not every night, but some. Enough. Some mornings, I'd wake to find her curled at the foot of my bed, clutching her raccoon, just watching the light rise on the walls. She never said why. I never made her explain. At school, she's easing back into things. Half days for now. Art therapy 3 times a week. Her teacher, Mrs. Whitaker, says she's quiet, but curious. She finishes her math problems faster than the others. She asks a lot of questions about how rainbows are made. At home, she colors more than she talks. But her drawings have changed. There are still castles. Still trees and stars. But now, there's also a girl with curly hair, holding a shield with the word "safe" written across it. Sometimes she draws that girl standing between 2 shadows. Sometimes the shadows are just silhouettes. Sometimes they're not there at all. The other day, we were driving home from therapy. She looked out the window and said, "Mommy Abby, Do you think brave people get tired too? I smiled, even though it hurt. All the time, I said. But that's how you know they're brave. They keep going anyway. She nodded slowly, then turned back to the window, tracing circles in the fogged glass. Later that night, while we were doing dishes, she dried the last plate and said, "I like this house. It doesn't hide things." I didn't say anything. I just wrapped her in a towel, held her tight, and whispered, "Me too." We don't talk about the ridge much. Not anymore. But we talk about the future. About painting the fence. Getting a dog someday. Maybe a trampoline if the backyard ever dries out. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't show up with fanfare or finish lines. Sometimes it looks like banana pancakes at dinner time. Sometimes it's the way a child finally stops checking the door before she falls asleep. And sometimes it's a house that lets you start over, without ghosts in the walls. There was a time when I believed truth had to be gentle, soft-spoken, tucked behind careful phrasing, like a secret too fragile for air. I thought survival meant peace, and peace meant silence. That if you kept your voice low enough, the world would keep its claws off you. But I know better now. Because Ellie taught me. Not in one grand moment. Not with fists or fury. But with the way she whispered, "I'm scared," and trusted I would hear it. With the way she handed me her drawings like maps with lines, shadow boxes, stick figures trying to climb out of what no one else would see. She never shouted. She never needed to. And still, her truth thundered louder than any courtroom speech or headline ever could. It echoed through voice recordings, down marble hallways, across polished oak benches. It tore through the comfortable lies people build to protect their image. It cracked the mask of generational denial like glass under pressure. And for the first time in her small, quiet life, she was heard. There's something sacred about that. To be believed. To have your pain met not with excuses, not with redirection, but with action. With presence. With someone who says, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." I used to think love was about protection building walls, so no harm could reach the people you care about. Now I know it's not about walls at all. It's about walking into the room when everyone else is leaving. It's about saying the thing no one wants to hear, even when your voice shakes. It's about standing between a child and the storm, not because you're fearless, but because they've run out of places to hide. And it's about knowing that telling the truth doesn't make you cruel. It makes you clear. The world will tell you otherwise. They'll say, "Don't air family matters in public. Don't accuse unless you're absolutely sure. Don't ruin a man's life over a child's confusion." But I've seen what silence ruins. It doesn't just break children. It teaches them their pain is inconvenient, that their stories are burdens, that their reality isn't real unless an adult confirms it. I won't teach Ellie that. Not ever. She deserves better. All children do. So I've made a promise not just to her, but to the girl I once was, and to the woman I've become. We will not whisper the truth to keep others comfortable. If the truth makes someone squirm, maybe it's because they were never meant to sit peacefully in its presence. And if speaking, it costs us our place at their table, we'll build a new one, with space for every voice they tried to silence. Ellie still asks questions at night. About the past. About safety. About whether people can change. Sometimes I don't have answers. But I always tell her this. You don't have to whisper anymore. Not here. Not with me. Your truth is strong enough to stand at full volume. And on the nights she forgets, I remind her, truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stop apologizing for existing.